Hello, this is Eldoric The Guardian Tank, here to go over what class you may want to play if you're trying to pick a tanking class. Now, there's 4 to choose from, but the most important thing I'm going to say right up front is pick the one you think you would like the best, not what others think. Now, we're going to start here, of course, with the Protection Warrior. Now, the Protection Warrior is interesting because it is the first tank. Originally, when Blizzard made the game, they looked to the Warrior as the primary tank for the game. Now I'm going to show you some of the abilities here. They have a nice collage of them. A great toolkit, and that was one of the many strengths of the Warrior tank. The fact that they have almost something for every single situation. And they have extra little things like Vigilance, which you could pick up if you like. Very strong trees. Now you can look at my spec right here. I change my spec all the time. I actually went with Deep Wounds so I could take advantage of the Worgen Racial for a little bit of extra crit. And I got pretty good uptime on it. I have about 70 to 80%. Now you see I'm charging in here. A very visceral feel to the Warrior. That was a Thunderclap, doing my shouts, using my cooldowns, hammering away. Got a big dragon in my way, but that's okay. I believe that's actually one of our guildies watching me do this. And as you can see, the Warrior tends to have a very visceral feel. In the face, you can see my sword and board proc right there on the auras. You can see my roars, my shouts. Again, a lot of it has to do with just hammering away at the opponent. Not a lot of flashy effects, but the ones that you do get kind of give you a feeling that you're really pounding against an enemy. Sword, shield, you don't need magic. Now I'm demonstrating a little bit of the movement utility here. I used at first a charge, then intercept, then a heroic leap, followed on by the Worgen sprint here. So I can really move around, and then a heroic throw. So they got good range. They have all the tools that you would need to tank. Moving on, we're going to go to the Protection Paladin. That was my old Paladin, and here is yet an old Paladin. He's the Dwarf. I actually turned him into a Draenei. Say hello. Now what I'm going to do is just give you the basic feel of the Paladin class here. Now, they're a very solid class. They actually have a buff that increases their threat opposed to a stance. And as you can see, I have different kinds of ores I can augment. I can have ones that give me more health and mana. I can have ones that increase my damage and my threat. So I've got options there that's fairly unique among the tanks. Now, I'm going to start here. I got 2 ranged moves. I used a Judgment and an Avenger Shield. And then I used a Crusader Strike. And I'm building, as you can see, some holy power here. Continue to hammer away, and then I got my proc, very similar to the sword and board that we saw, is that proc, which is for Avenger Shield. It's Crusader, Grand Crusader. I have these hand abilities, which I can use on myself or on others. Another very handy ability. Great utility that you get from the Paladin tank. More utility than almost any other tank for the group or for your raid. Now you can see a lot of their animations, they're very shiny. I'm using the Consecrate there. You get a lot of eye candy when using the Paladin. They're also a shield tank like the Warrior, so they block 30% of incoming damage, but the Warrior has critical block, which can double their block, whereas with the Paladin you get 40% through Holy Shield. You can see that up in the corner right there, Holy Shield taken away, and I just got to refresh that, and it's pretty easy to do. So I just continue hammering away with a lot of these abilities. Another proc there. So they're a fairly straightforward class, easy to understand, a very good tanking class, and you get a lot of versatility just by being a Paladin. Now I'm also going to use right here Wings, increase my power. You saw me use a Shield to the right, just a primary move. You can also use your Holy Power on Word of Glory every 20 seconds if you so choose. And you see Guardian of Ancient Kings right there, or the primary cooldown. So a lot of cool stuff going on there with the Paladin tank as far as their animations go. So less mobility, but a lot of good range attacks and the ability to help your group out. Now I also want to quickly show you the trees we have here. They don't have as much diversity as the other tanks, but still a very solid showing. Moving on to the Druid, we have my beloved Eldoric here, sporting his Wrath gear. But here he is now. There he is, Eldoric, the Bear Tank. Now, I transferred over to using a Warrior, but he was my main for a long time, and I do love Druids. Now, one great thing about being a Druid is you get a lot of forms. You can do a lot of things with these forms. And here's Bear form. It's your primary tanking form. Now, I'm going to point this out because it's important. Now, as I'm in Bear form, I have Bear abilities. I go to Cat form, I then have Cat abilities. I go to caster form, I have my magic casting abilities. Back to bear abilities. So if you go into a form, you're locked out of the abilities from another form. This is good and bad. I mean, it means that druids have a lot of tools, a lot of things they can do, but they have to be very wise when to use it. Now, honestly, as a tank, you're going to be primarily in bear. Very rarely are you going to hop out because it decreases your armor by so much in your damage reduction that it's a good way to get yourself killed. Now, I'm going to use here the primary charge, the feral charge of the druid. Now, druids don't have as many charges as, let's say, a warrior does, but they do have it. So they got good stuff from all around the tanking pool and all the primary abilities. Not as robust in tools and tanking form as the other ones, but still very solid. Now, as you can see, I showed you Savage Defense. Bears don't have a shield. So what they do is they attack, and if they get a critical strike, they get a shield called Savage Defense that's based off their AP, their attack power. And that's what their shield is. It's an okay ability. The great thing about the bear is you really get a sense of, by damaging my opponent, that's how I build up my defense. So I like the feel of it. Now, as you can see, I'm using lacerates to use pulverize. With 3 lacerates, which is the max number of stacks, I can then have a pulverize that increases my crit by 9%. The crit is critical because it's what gives me my Savage Defense. So I want to increase my crit as much as I can. Good abilities. You can see, again, like the warrior, a very visceral feel. One important thing to point out about the bear tank is this is the form you will be looking at. You won't see your gear all that much. But I never had a huge issue with that. Now, see, I'm transferring in and out of forms here. So that's the basics of the bear tank. Thank you very much, Eldoric. Take a bow. Okay, we're going to slide over and we're going to start talking about the Death Knight. Now, the Death Knight has the ability, they start at level 55, which is a great leap in levels, and encourages a lot of people to try them out. They are a bit of a complicated tank, because they're, much like the druid, their attacks are what kind of make up for their overall mitigation. Now, here's the blood tree. That's the tanking tree. Lots of cooldowns in there. And we're going to go through those in a minute, but they are definitely cooldown tank. And, of course, like all the tanks, they have a myriad of glyphs that they can use to augment their threat and overall survivability. Now, Death Strike. Now, this guy is critical. Now, you can read over there what it does, but basically it heals you for the damage you take over the last 5 seconds or for at least 7% of your health. So, part of your mitigation comes from that. Your self-healing and then your blood shield, which you'll see proc in a minute. Now, they're basically based off of strikes, different kinds of strikes. You have Blood Strike, which is a fairly decent AoE move. You have Scourge Strike, which is going to lay down these diseases, and then you have Icy Touch. These diseases are what are basically your debuffs. Now, their mitigation is tied into, via Death Strike, into their rune system. Now, you can see I got the blood shield that I got from doing a Death Strike, based off the amount I healed myself for. That's their mastery. Again, it's a very active mastery. Now, I just used one of the cooldowns, Dancing Runic Weapon. And as you can see, I have to wait for Death Strike to come up. And I have to manage these runes. Now, keeping your blood runes down is also important, because that's what gives you blood barrier, more mitigation. Now, I'm just going to go tapping through these. You have Vampiric Blood. You have Icebound Fortitude, which is the primary cooldown for damage reduction. Empowered Runic Weapon brings back all your runes. Could be critical how you use that at times. Death Grip is a lot of fun. Lynchborn, that's one that can be a little bit complicated, but that could be a very helpful cooldown if you know how to manage it. Of course, Anti-Magic Shield, probably one of the best class ones you can get. Now, I'm also going to use here Army of the Undead, which can be used as a cooldown. Those guys are just coming in, they attack, lots of damage, and they can also taunt. Maybe not great in a raid, but can be very, very useful. Now, I just used Blood Boil, a snap aggro move, and this here is Death and Decay, which is the persistent AoE move they have. Very, very strong AoE threat with the DK. So with DKs, you get a lot of cooldowns, you get great AoE threat, and you get kind of an active mitigation, which is very, very fun. So DK's great tank. You have to try it out. Now, I went through these and I gave you the overall feel of the class. Let you look at their animations, told you the basics of it. The most important thing I'm going to say about picking your class if you want to be a tank is pick the one that you want to play that interests you the most. A lot of people will say, hey, the paladin's the best, or, oh, you don't want to be a druid because of this. Ignore that. Go with what you think is going to be fun. If you want to be, a warrior who doesn't use magic and is just up there in your face, then go with that. If you want to be dark and, almost like a Sith Lord, then go ahead and be the Death Knight. It's up to you. And also look at the mechanics. If you don't want to manage runes, then Death Knight's probably not for you. If you don't like the raid system, then you want to stay away from bears and warriors, so you may want to be a paladin. Maybe you want to be able to do heal, damage, and tank with one class. Well, then a paladin or a druid would be your best pick. Point is, pick the class you want. And that way you have the most fun. Don't pick off what you think is going to be the most powerful. Anyway, until next time, this is Eldoric, the Guardian Tank, and pick your tank wisely. Force lightning! I bet you didn't know Death Knights could do that. Yeah, feel the dark side.